All right. So we are live. Welcome to education session number 2. If you guys are not muted, make sure that you stay muted the whole time. I get very easily distracted. I don't like being distracted. And make sure you have a pen and paper or Google Notes or something. Take some notes. If you have questions along the way, do not unmute yourself and ask the question. Write it down. I'll open up at the end for a little Q&A. And we can talk about some of these concepts and stuff in more depth if you want to. Okay. So today, we're going to talk about the solvable problem and the 3 C's of success. Okay. This is kind of building on a little bit about what we talked about yesterday. If you haven't seen that video yet, it is in the announcements channel. If you need help finding that, we can help you out. Okay. So, the first thing that we're going to talk about is this equation right here. This is a big one. Okay. It's anxiety equals uncertainty times powerlessness. Okay, and I want you guys to understand, I need to preface this, that these principles and these underpinnings are the intellectual property of Dan Nicholson and Nick and the Wolf Den. We are piggybacking and we are using these to teach our people, but these are not my principles. This is not my brainchild. This is Dan Nicholson's intellectual property. Okay, he's actually the one who made this equation. Okay, if you don't know who Dan Nicholson is, you'll find out soon enough. He's it would be an insult to call him a CPA, but he's one of the best CPAs in the country, and he is the guy who wrote the accounting standard for Microsoft. Okay, he is in the corner of the Wolf Den, which means likely he will be in our corner, maybe if we can prove ourselves. Okay, so what does this equation mean? Anxiety equals uncertainty times powerlessness. And it's important that you understand that this times makes a difference. Okay, it's a multiplicative equation. So that means that anytime there is even a little bit of uncertainty or a little bit of powerlessness, it will increase anxiety and confusion and emotions exponentially. It is not an addition, it is a multiplicative equation. And what we're aiming to do and what the Wolf Den aims to do is to remove uncertainty, to give people certainty within the tools and the strategies that we deploy to make money in the crypto space, in order to assume more power over the outcome by providing less anxiety on a daily or yearly basis, whatever it is. Less anxiety in the process. Okay, I think everybody in here shares the same experience. They've been in part of Telegram channels where it is an absolute shit show. It's a nightmare. There's a bunch of confusion. There's a bunch of FUD. There's a lot of anxiety. Anxiety is what causes people to make poor emotional decisions. Okay, watching the chart all day. We talked about this last time, frequency of exposure. It is not helpful. If you have certainty in the process and in the tools, the tokens and the farming and all that, then you don't need to have anxiety to watch the chart all the time, because the price doesn't matter at that point. And we'll talk more about that a little bit down the line. But if you can create an asset where you can effectively teach people that the price does not matter and people stop watching the chart, there's less anxiety and the chart goes up over time, especially because the math of how providing liquidity and base case and chilling or in our case, using a gold mine, the math is broken to the upside. It will consistently raise the floor, which means the price goes up as long as people aren't being emotional dingleberries. Okay, so I just wanted to explain this, and you can apply this different things, right? Financial anxiety equals financial uncertainty times financial powerlessness. Emotional anxiety equals emotional uncertainty times emotional powerlessness. Okay. So if we can eliminate a little bit of uncertainty and a little bit of powerlessness, we can make a massive exponential impact on reducing anxiety, which is the goal. Okay, so to drive that anxiety down, we have to increase certainty and assume more power over the outcome. Okay, and this is the way we do this is using some of these strategies that are more dependable and more reliable versus the traditional buy low, sell high paradigm of crypto, right? There's a lot of tools out there in the crypto space that aren't being used by a lot of people because everybody's trying to get rich quick, right? When you ape your $10,000 in that you need for rent, guess how much anxiety you have? A lot. Okay. So how do we do this? How do we drive down? Who's got a hot mic? Baby Crypto, can you mute yourself? Guys, please don't unmute yourself until the end. Okay.
Oh, that was an accident.
Okay. All good. All right. So how do we do this? How can we effectively drive down uncertainty and powerlessness and take more control? Okay. The answer is the 3 C's. Okay. I call them the 3 C's of success. That's just something I made up for fun, but Nick calls them the 3 C's. This is Nick and Dan's certainty, the certainty app. If you don't have it yet, I'll probably provide a link to that at some point for you guys to create an account. It is an amazing app. It is the intellectual property of Dan and Nick. It is phenomenal. If you do not have one yet, we'll make sure that you get set up, especially the wardens. I'll likely help the wardens get set up and understand it because they respect my time. Okay. All right. So let's talk about 3 C's. There is a reason that these are backwards. Okay. This is the first C, and this is the last one. The reason why we're going to talk about it backwards is because this is how people act. Okay. It makes sense to talk about it backwards because this is how people go through the processes of life. And this is why people wreck themselves. Okay. So the reason why we're starting with collapsing time is because everybody is rushing to collapse time. They're rushing to get rich quick. They're rushing to make a bunch of money to retire. They're rushing into doing all kinds of stuff. They're displaying erratic behavior without direction. Okay. They're like a chicken with its head's cut off, running around, throwing darts in the dark, hoping to hit a bullseye. Okay. The problem with this is you cannot collapse time to get from point A to point B without defining what point A and what point B are. Okay. That's a clarity piece. We'll get there. But people are trying to, if you put, and this is an analogy that Nick uses, if you put some directions into Google Maps and you say, hey, Google Maps, take me here as fast as possible. Okay. If these variables aren't defined, point A and point B, there can be no directions given to get where you want to go because you haven't defined it, right? I hope that makes sense. So the directions to get there, the most efficient path forward is the certainty piece. Okay. And this is the biggest, one of the biggest ones. Okay. Clarity is probably the biggest because you have nothing without it, but certainty is super important, and certainty has to precede collapsing time because you must have a viable route alongside viable alternatives before we can try to collapse time and move faster, rush around, and get things in a more efficient way. Okay. We have to define the variables, and we have to have a viable route, and we have to have a strategy and keep time and randomness on our side in case things don't go according to plan. Because since the beginning of time, how often have things gone according to plan over a 5-year period? Not very often. Okay. So it's super important that we keep time and randomness on our side. Certainty is also what people sell you. Okay. If you're buying a course, like let's say you're buying a weight loss course, say, hey, I can help you lose 20 pounds in 12 weeks. Okay. They're giving you certainty. They're selling you certainty. I can provide this thing that you want. Right. The problem is the majority of people are selling false certainty. Okay. This is what like 98% of projects in this space are doing. We're going to go to the moon. We're going to get listed on Binance. When Lambo, right? All this crap. It's very, very common. What we will not do in Forge is give anybody false certainty in anything. We will not give financial advice. We're not going to tell people what to do with their money. We're not going to promise them anything. We're going to try to stay away from like, we're going to change the game. Like we're going to be the best project in BSC. We don't need that as much as, and I appreciate that some of you feel this way, but we do not need that. We're going to let our actions do the talking. And we're going to deploy the strategy of let them watch. You don't believe us? You don't see the value in this? Cool. No worries. Sit on the sidelines. Watch. See what happens. Until you have the certainty that you need in our project or our asset, do not invest. We are going to tell people to not invest. Okay, it's going to be different than the traditional Telegram where you have all the Moon Boys screaming at people to buy the dip. We're not going to do that. Okay, and I'm going to make sure that people understand that. There's going to be times where people are going to slip up, and I'm going to address it and use it as an example. Just understand if I do that, I'm not speaking just to you or like getting mad at you or anything. It's an example. It's an opportunity for me to speak to the collective so that everybody understands what the expectations are. Okay, so we cannot pick the most efficient path forward. We cannot have absolute certainty in something in which we do not have clarity in. Okay, and this is why clarity is the first C. Clarity is defining the variables and the core values that matter to you. There is no right or wrong answer in this. This is an open loop. Okay, defining where you are right now and where you want to be, what you truly want in life. If you have not defined those, you do not have clarity. You cannot set up a solvable equation without clarity. Okay? Clarity and certainty is what's necessary to set up the solvable equation. And then we start looking at, okay, how does it make sense if I want to pay my student loans off in 5 years? How can I do that? What's the most efficient path forward for me to make $100,000 in 5 years to pay off my student loans? Okay, you have to define the variables. And the thing is with clarity is the question you have to ask yourself is, have I ever actually defined what it is I truly want in my life? What does my dream life look like? Do I have a family? What kind of father or mother am I? Where do I want my kids to go to school? What kind of car do I drive? What kind of car does my wife drive? Do we have a private chef? Do we have a trainer? Do we have a cook? Do we have real estate in a tropical place that we can go on vacation? How many vacations a year do we take? These are all questions that go into defining variables. And up until 6 months ago, like I had a very rough understanding of how to define variables and get granular and specific. And it wasn't until, Callie sat down with me, we got really granular, that I was able to really put my finger on a core capital number and really create a solvable equation that made sense, not just numbers thrown in there. Okay, and I think it's super important that you guys understand, if you create a solvable equation, once you define these variables, and you say, okay, I want 10 million in 10 years at, the base case that Wolf Den uses is 70% APY. Okay. Now you can start to look at, okay, how can I collapse time? And likely the appreciation of the asset that you're in is going to collapse time for you. Okay, so likely you won't really have to do much. But once you've defined, what this core capital number is, it's important that you don't keep moving it around. If you keep moving that core capital number around just to play with things, or because you change your mind every couple of weeks, that tells me that you do not understand the solvable equation and you do not have clarity. Does that make sense to everybody? So we're going to go through kind of how to set up the solvable equation here. But this is a very important thing, and hopefully, we'll get you guys set up on this in the Certainty app and have most of you have a solvable equation by the time launch comes around, so that you have the clarity in what you want to achieve. We can start to create the certainty, whether that's in Forge or whether that's in Knight or whether that's in Guardian or whatever that's in, whatever you want, Bitcoin, whatever. You have to understand, what are the vessels? What is my macro belief? How am I going to get there? Okay. We're going to get to that over time. Okay. So let me see. Did I miss anything here? Okay. So, before we get into the solvable equation, just remember, slow down. Take the time to get clarity on your personal principles and your core values. What do I actually want? What is important to me? And then you can ask yourself, what is the most efficient path forward to achieving this? Okay? So what the solvable equation is you are defining the gap between where you are and what you truly want. And that's when it'll become much clearer to how to efficiently bridge that gap. Okay? Comes back to this. Once you have that set up, you remove uncertainty, you assume more power over the outcome, and you drastically reduce anxiety and emotional decisions. If we can do this effectively as a community, good things happen. Really good things. Okay. All right. So, the reason, I think it's important to note that the reason a lot of people don't want to define these things like inadvertently is because the inherent reason that most people don't define success is because by defining success, you are also simultaneously defining what failure is for you. Right? And I'll use an example that Nick used. If success to you is being home at 5 p.m. so that you can have dinner with your kids and your family, and you are not home at 5 p.m., you have failed. And it doesn't feel good. Humans don't like failure. They will move away from that. So the reason why a lot of people do not define what their success looks like is because if they do not reach that, then they have also defined that they were a failure. Does that make sense? It's uncomfortable because you're doing things. You're saying, "Hey, I want more time with my family, but I'm gonna go work more hours to make more money so I can spend more time with my family later." You are violating your own personal core values and principles by doing that. Be conscious of that. Pay attention. Okay? All right. Yeah, people don't like failing, which is why most of them don't actually succeed. Because if you didn't know, failure is the catalyst to success. Okay, the people who are successful because they didn't quit. It's not because they didn't fail. It's because they failed forward. Okay.
I can concur with that.
Awesome. It's good to hear that feedback. I love that. I'm glad it's resonating with some of you. So how was I going to start this? I guess the question is that you have to ask yourself is, if nothing changes, am I on track to effectively get what I want in an appropriate time frame? Okay. So if what you're doing right now, and let's say you need to pay off your mortgage, okay, and what you're doing right now, you'll be able to pay off your mortgage in 200 years, and you'll be able to retire your wife in 300. That is not acceptable, right? I mean, I'm not going to say it is for you or not, but like if my goal was to retire my wife, pay off my mortgage, and I couldn't do it in my lifetime, that would be unacceptable for me. So it's okay to take on more risk to close that gap and get what I actually want. Okay, so taking on risk is acceptable. If you're in crypto, you understand that. Okay, your risk tolerance is likely higher than others, as long as the alternative is unacceptable. Okay, so if you're on track to get everything you want doing what you're doing, or by sitting in the stock market and you're sitting in crypto, aping into shitcoins and stuff, you are acting like an asshole. Okay, understand that. But you like we talked about earlier, there's no way for you to define if you are on track without defining the variables, without setting up an intractable or solvable equation. Okay, so on the flip side of that, this is also really important. If you are on track to get what you want, then the certainty piece actually flips into removing risk in order to lock in and make sure you do actually end up getting what you want. Okay, so if you're not on track, taking on more risk is acceptable because it puts you on track. If you're on track, taking on more risk, aka acting like an asshole, like aping into shitcoins or making poor investments or whatever, you are removing certainty of you achieving the things that you would have already achieved if you had done nothing. Okay, again, you'll have no clue until you define the variables. So, what is the point? What's the point? If you aren't getting closer to what you really want in life, what's the point? Why are you in crypto? You just in crypto to make money, to have more money? Money is just a means to getting what you really want in life. Do yourself a favor, sit down, don't distract yourself, and actually write out what it is you want to accomplish in life. Some of the things we talked about earlier, I'm not going to go over it again, but get clarity in what you're trying to accomplish. Okay, we're using crypto as a vessel to determine the appropriate strategy to get you there. Once you've defined your starting point, your risk tolerance, and an appropriate timeline to get those things, then you can choose which area of crypto, what tools in your toolbox you can use to get there. If you can get there with 20% APY, then don't be in Forge. Don't be in base case. Go sit in Anchor Protocol, which is a 20% APY, and it's insured. And go do whatever you want. Forget about it. There's no need. Okay? That this endless pursuit of more. Humans are so conditioned to want more. The hustle culture, all that crap, right? Start to learn how to bias closer over more. What brings me closer to what I truly want? Okay, so you have to define that. Bias, bias closer over more. Okay. Okay. Defining what you truly want. Once you know kind of what the things are you want, you have to put a dollar value on those things, right? So if I want a babysitter, or if I want a private chef, or if I want my kids to go to private school, you have to know what those things cost in the real world in dollars, right? So put a dollar value on those things, make a list of what you want, figure out how much those things cost. Don't worry about the dollar value here, okay? Just define what it is you really want. Be honest with yourself. You want a fucking Lambo? You don't want to drive a minivan? Then get a Lambo, okay? Define what you want. Then put a dollar value on those things. That's going to help you to determine your core capital number. Okay, so your core capital number, this is the number of dollars that you need. And once you've achieved this, you can pull everything out and you will have everything that you want in life. Okay, so let's go. Okay, super basic solvable equation here. Okay, this is let me see if I can zoom in on this. Yeah. I'm learning Excel very slowly, so bear with me. Okay, so if you want to make $10 million in 10 years, I'll give you guys a little bit of clarity around how this is possible. Okay, this is a compounding interest calculator. Dan Nicholson wrote the math for this. Okay, we talked about him earlier. Okay, if you want to make $10 million in 10 years at an average of 70% APY over time. Okay, this is not just the yield. There's several factors that play into this. We'll get more granular on that later. But if you want to get $10 million in 10 years, the 70% APY, if you started with $2,000, that means you would have to put $500 of new fiat money into the front end of the farm every month in order to turn 2,000 into 10 million at an average of 70% APY over the course of those 10 years. Okay, it's very likely in the beginning when our farm launches that the APY is going to be above 500, and it'll likely stay above 100 or 150% for quite some time because we don't have a huge group, which is good. Less people means better APY for all of us in the beginning. And if we're building a strong foundation with that, we'll do very, very well. Okay. If you start with $5,000, let's see, 10,000. Yeah, we're getting close. Let's do 11,000. If you started with $11,000, you would just $6 is bothering me. Okay, 11,500. Okay, so now this is negative. If you started with $11,000, 11,500, and you compounded that daily and got an average of 70% over 10 years, you would have $10 million. You see how fast this stuff can, like, I wouldn't say fast. You see how much this can add up over time? Predictably add up over time if you just extend your time frames. Everybody's in here trying to ape into a moonshot that does 1,000x in 3 weeks. They're trying to get rich, but they end up losing a ton of money. They end up just screwing themselves. Okay? That takes you the opposite way, that gets you further away from what you actually want. This provides certainty. Okay? And who knows if we're going to be able to get an average of 70% over 10 years, right? But Guardian did 300 or 400% in the month of January. That's 5 years off of your solvable equation, just from the price of the asset appreciating, right? So that's what I was talking about earlier. Your solvable equation, you can collapse time by doing nothing, just compounding and letting the value of the assets that are in your LP pair appreciate. Okay, so I just wanted to, I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but this is your core capital number right here. How much money that you need to make. Mine was actually only 8.3. When I did the whole thing, wrote it all out, figured out all the costs of everything, I only need $8.3 million to get everything I want in life. Okay, this was my solvable equation when I started out. I had no idea what I was doing. I'm 5 years ahead of schedule. That makes sense to everybody? How crazy that can get? Compounding interest. It's pretty nuts. Okay, and the best part is you don't have to stare at fucking charts all day, because the price doesn't matter of your asset. If the yield is consistent, the yield is one of the main things. And then if the price does appreciate, then you're just collapsing time just from that. If the price goes down, the yield that you've been making the whole time hedges your downside, removing anxiety. You have more power over your investment, right? So determine your core capital number of money you need to live dream life. Okay, then once you have the core capital number, you can determine how much percentage do I need. Let's say that you're starting with $5,000 and you need to get there in 10 years for whatever reason. Okay, and you're like 10, or you need to get there in 8 years. Okay, 10 years isn't acceptable. You need it done in 8 years. Cool. What percentage do you need to get 5%. What percentage do you need to get in order to turn that 5,000 into 10 million in 8 years? If you got an average of 100% APY, $5,000 starting, an average of 100% APY over 8 years, you would have $10 million. Okay, so now you know, okay, I need to get 100%. So maybe it might be a smarter idea for me to split my aces, build a base case, lock that in, and then take the overage, put it into something that's going to put it into moonshots, or put it into new pre-sales or private sales, or put it into the night farms or something like that that's going to give you above 100% APY, right? So you can determine what your risk tolerance is. And if you can get it with 20%, then it makes no sense for you to come into our project and invest and possibly take yourself further away, even though I don't believe that will be the case. It doesn't, you are violating your own personal and economic principles to do that. Okay. What return do you need? What asset makes sense? Okay. And that's how finally you back into the appropriate strategy. Okay. That's how you can discern, okay, if I only need 70%, then the gold mine and forge is going to be perfect, because I believe that I have certainty and that I'll get an average of 70% over the next 8 years. Okay. And again, we don't know what's going to happen. We're keeping time and randomness on our side. We will adapt when we need to. But getting some clarity and some certainty, getting some clarity and some certainty around your financial goals and what you want to accomplish in life outside of just finances allows you to make easy decisions and inform behavior about how to act in the crypto space to get what you want. Okay? That's powerful, because when you don't have anxiety anymore, because now you have certainty and you believe you have more power over the outcome. Does it make sense for me to go $5,000 into a shitcoin that's launching and potentially get rugged and lose it all, when I could make $5,000 in 6 weeks predictably doing nothing? Is it worth it to take the risk? It's easy to answer that question when you've done the work. Okay. So I know this is a lot, but it's really valuable information. Okay. I won't share this because this is the Wolf Den calculator. However, there is a calculator site, compound interest calculator right here. You can start with your initial balance. You can compound monthly or daily or weekly or whatever, and you can kind of see how the numbers change, right? So if I started with 5,000 and I wanted 70% yearly and for 10 years, let's say for 5 years, and I compounded daily with no new money put in, I would have $160,000 in 5 years at a 70% APY. Okay. If you lengthen your time frames, you now have 5 million. Okay. Compounding interest gets crazy towards the end of it. There's an exponential curve. So in the beginning, it's going to feel like you're kind of snailing along. You're not making very much in yield. Relax. Take a breath. Go outside. Play with your kids. Go play some basketball. Stop looking at the chart. Okay, this is going to be the hardest thing for us to teach people, is how to slow down. You can see over the course of the years how this adds up. Okay, it's kind of slow in the beginning, and then it blows up. Okay, so I'll show this compound interest calculator site for those that don't have it. I'll just share it in the main chat right now. Okay, so you guys can hit that with a bookmark, put it in a crypto folder, create a crypto folder on your browser if you haven't yet. I'm going to open up. I'm going to unmute everybody. Try not to talk over each other. But does anybody have any questions about the principles that we just walked through? I know it's a lot. For some of you who aren't in the Wolf Den, this is brand new, and it probably some of it blew your mind. For those who are in the Wolf Den, it's a good reminder. So if you have any feedback or something maybe that you missed the first time that you were able to catch this time, go ahead. Okay, cool. So everybody understands. Perfect. There's no dumb questions or bad feedback, guys. You know, it's like Jeff has said. If you have a question, don't feel afraid to ask it, because there's probably a couple other people who have the same question that could likely benefit from the answer that's given. So, okay, cool. I'm gonna stop the recording. 35 minutes. Perfect. We're nailing it. Thanks for coming, guys.